Okay, so let's talk about postmodernism, something I don't know much about, but I'm still going to talk about it, and you cannot stop me. So I've recently heard about how the Frankfurt School, by some of the more radical Marxist Leninists, is considered to be revisionist. But then I looked into more about what revisionism actually is, and I'm using this one author, a Russian author who is, I think, an economist or maybe a historian or both. And my husband and the local Marxist group has been reading this book of his, and this person's still alive, and we can even get in touch with him and ask him questions, which is kind of great. But yeah, he talks about all the different branches of leftism, so to speak, in this one book that my husband and the group are reading at the moment, or at least they have been reading it. I don't know if they still do, but the Frankfurt School is described there as revisionist, but it is not described as something bad. It is not described as something undesirable. And when my husband and I started thinking about what this may imply, we've come to some interesting conclusions, which I think may be also applicable to postmodernism. Because if you think about it, you look at the circumstances of when Marx was writing what he did, and how he himself, he and Engels themselves revised some of their ideas because new data would come in. For example, after the French Commune's failure, after the French Commune's experience, Marx and Engels wrote a brand new introduction, I believe, for the Communist Manifesto, where they mentioned that the instructions, the 10 steps in the Communist Manifesto, should not be used as actual instructions. This is just something that Marx and Engels came up with without much, not necessarily basis in reality, but without much evidence to back it up. So they were willing to revise whatever needed to be revised, and they did. So it's kind of funny to me that the some of the more radical Marxist-Leninists seem to have this aversion to Frankfurt School and postmodernism. It seems to me almost as if they wanted Marx and Engels and Lenin's words to be this dogma that cannot be changed. And if you look at the modern circumstances, you're like, well, unfortunately, things will have to change. We'll have to reconsider some of the things that were recommended by Marx and Engels. We have to look at what the circumstances were in Lenin's time, and we see that we just can't replicate some of the things that happened, for example, during the October Revolution. And I think this person, Althusser, I don't know how to pronounce his name. So he also talked about how some of the conditions for the October Revolution were basically just kind of random. Obviously, there is historical material analysis of those circumstances that is available, but if you look at it from a layman's person point of view, it's like the circumstances just aligned to be such that the people's revolution was possible. That is not to say that Lenin had no role whatsoever in the revolution and in the early years of the formation of the Soviet Union. That is to say that the conditions dictate what we do. And this is something that is recommended all the time, but I don't think we take it seriously enough, that we have to continuously examine our own circumstances, and we can't just go with what was written in the 19th century, even though it is helpful to read what was written in the 19th and 20th centuries, because we can learn a great deal, especially looking at certain mistakes that were made and kind of modeling some of the possible situations. But ultimately, we have to be very highly adaptable and flexible, and we have to observe very carefully what's happening around us. And this is what I believe is one of the most important lessons that we can take from this whole should we even read postmodernist works or not conversation. I think the most important thing to take away is that we have to observe what's happening, use the materialist dialectical lens to analyze the data that we observe, and be willing to change our plans at a moment's notice. That's just what I gather. And I'm not even sure if it is at all connected to postmodernism or not. It's just that I'm personally interested in reading some of the postmodernist works. And I will do once my attention is not that of a goldfish. But meanwhile, you can let me know what you think, and let's keep this conversation going.